we're talking about education, I would choose to use the word illumination because it puts it or shines or gives you an opportunity to shine in that dark side
Mm.
of yourself, which is sometimes what's the stronger impulse to keep you going and to fighting against
Mm.
what might be more beneficial for you. But there's no point, as I say, preaching that from afar. It really has to go on grassroots levels.
Mm.
Do you see that similar sort of thing happening in society here in this area at present?
I see a lot of good stuff happening in this area. There's a lot of really, really good people working on problematic issues. Um, the key is to keep people involved, breaking down those barriers. And I know that Lurgan and other towns have a reputation for in the past for violence, and now it's like sectarianism is the big elephant in the room. It's Jumbo the elephant in the room. Some people don't want to admit that, but I think that sectarianism, and if we can beat down sectarianism in a very positive way by bringing people together, I think that's the key to making our society better. And
It's instead of having the others, let's look at each other,
yeah,
as it were.
yeah,
A hard thing to do, but not impossible. There are plenty
no,
of examples of where
no,
it does work.
no. And I reach out at the moment. I reach out through my martial arts group, and reaching into, both boys and girls, men and women, and coming together under the banner of martial arts, under Bruce Lee, and under my group, my Jeet Kune Do group, which comes from Bruce Lee's heritage, and my instructors. So that brings people together, and my message to people is that martial arts, you could say like martial arts is violent. It's not really violent. Martial arts, to me, is about love. It's not
I,
about
I think
violence
I
at
think
all.
we talked about this briefly
Mm,
when we met at the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu,
that's right.
and I asked the question, then I ask it again: Is it about the philosophy more than about the actual sport?
It's about both, and martial arts should be about health and well-being, and it's about the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual aspects of us as human beings, and attending to each one of those things. And I think that's really important. You could just go down the physical route, but to me that's just scratching the surface. I think it's deeper than that, and there's a philosophical aspect to it which goes right back into Zen Buddhism, I think, and other philosophies as well. So I think that's very important. And really, what I see in my group is very deep friendships being brought about by people who wouldn't necessarily cross paths. People from different cultures, different religions, different races, uh, and different interests. So coming together and doing martial arts together, to me, is it's a cultural experience. And one of my instructors uh, is very, very much into education across cultures in the world, because he's had instructors from all over the world, and he's like I don't you wouldn't call him Yoda, but he's one of those characters that is a very wise and wonderful man, and he teaches us lessons about philosophy and about culture and civilization every time we're in the room with him. He teaches through martial arts, because you'll be sweating buckets and hitting each other, but then he takes you aside and gives a mini lecture on civilization, culture, and society, and at the back of it all, it's about it boils right down to respect for ourselves, respect for others, respect for society, and doing our best and making a difference in the world.
It's a tough challenge for all of us over the last 5 6 years in particular to challenge what what we see on our screens. I'm not blaming media for
Mm.
this. Media is just a conduit, and some people will do it and some people won't. Mass media seems to kind of push the agenda of well, not so much the media, but the idea of commercialization. It's about things, how much we can get in our pockets, or have and have nots the wrong thing to do. So how do you challenge that ongoing in society? Because that's part of the difficulties that young people and others are finding. They can't
Mm.
deal with that. They're trying to chase the golden cow or whatever it might be, and they can't get to themselves.
Yes. I mean, one of my instructors said that happiness is an inside job, and people that are seeking happiness through being acquisitive, materialism. I'm part of that too, I suppose. because I'm much more wealthy than my parents or my grandparents were. I mean, they would look to me as probably being a millionaire in some ways because they were poverty-stricken people. And I think people, when you go back 100 years, 200 years, people were living on $1 a day, basically. Now we're very wealthy, but people are again, it's the surface of, the acquisitiveness and the portrayal that you can be happy by being more and more materialistic. I don't think that's correct. I think it has to be coming from within. But young people, young men especially, are under a lot of pressure at the minute. Young women too, uh, to present as strong and powerful, and as having themselves together and presenting, that they have the latest gear, the latest equipment, and keeping up. And when in fact they could be hurting inside, but they can't admit it. And then you get into a situation whereby people can be self-harming, or the suicide rate here is very high, or getting into drugs and substance misuse. Um,
You earlier on our way over here, you talked about your illness. I don't know what the illness was, but
mm,
what I gathered from is that there was learning in that set of circumstances. I
mm.
know I had my own mental health issues over the years, and the amount of learning coming out the other end of that was phenomenal. Still forget lots of the lessons, but there was learning for me, the interiority, if you like.
Mm.
When did that journey really kick into gear for you?
Well, I was at a training session, what we call a mass attack session, where people are coming at you with the pads and you have to fight your way out. It's like a gang attack situation, and a lot of pressure put on you. And I had a heart attack in the middle of it, and thought I'd pulled a muscle in my arm, but it was really I had a heart attack, and had to have within a few weeks, I had to have a triple heart bypass. Almost killed me, but thank God to the doctors
Let me
and
see.
nurses.
You're still here.
Yeah, I'm still here. But it really knocked me for six. Emotionally, I was felt wrecked. Physically, it took me nearly 2 years to recover. Um, and because I was coming from a place where I felt fit and well and strong and powerful, it really, I just felt as weak as a kitten for a long time. And emotionally, I felt it really hard to adjust. Um, and eventually, just by slowly working on my health and on my fitness, got my way back. And I'm now in a much better place than I was just before I had the heart attack. I thought I was out doing okay, but I wasn't doing okay. I was working in a pressure job. I was pushing myself, and that contributed to it to a certain extent. But also, there was something going to happen to my heart, and I didn't realize. I'd been for a few tests. I'd felt unwell. Passed all the tests with flying colours. Was told everything was great, but there was something going on in one of my arteries that wasn't good. So I had to learn a lesson, and it was a big lesson emotionally for me to come to terms with that. That I wasn't made of stainless steel. That I was flesh and blood like everybody else, and I had to admit that I was just as weak and as vulnerable as everybody else out there.
That vulnerability is a key to
Mm,
much of it. You and I can analyze our own vulnerabilities now, I'm
mm,
sure, because of those circumstances. Many people don't see nor wish to be vulnerable. It's that very conversation we're having there. You have to be seen to be this, you have to be seen to be the other, you have to be seen to be strong, and all the rest of it. But the vulnerability was where the most learning was for me. The vulnerability of saying, I can't do this myself. Can I get help? And that vulnerability opened up so many opportunities. I'm not saying in the same in yourself. What I do hear in what your story there, particularly with the heart, was that you built up a resilience. You probably had a resilience of nature. That doesn't seem to come forward with young people or many young people or whatever, or at least it could be more prevalent. And maybe that's what we need to kind of develop with people, some sort of resilience.
resilience and being strong. And I think that young men are told to be weak, and it seems to be imposed that they'll succumb to that, and I wouldn't say to be feminized, but to be not to be men, not to be strong, not to be aggressive, certainly not to be violent. And I think we need to encourage young men to be strong. And everybody's capable of violence. Young men are and older men are capable of violence, but I think being capable of violence but not using it is the way that I would teach my martial arts, because I teach people very violent things that they could hurt someone with, but they don't do it. They have the capacity to do it, but they don't. They refrain from doing it because they have too much respect. But they feel very capable of defending themselves and their loved ones. And for me, that's success. It's not a denial of our capacity for aggression or violence, but it's holding it in check and controlling it. But society seems to want to deny that to young men in particular. And I think that's a big mistake, because young men need to feel strong within themselves. Nobody likes a weak man. Certainly, a partner or a spouse does not respect weakness like that. They want someone they can trust and who will protect and stand up for them, whether it's a male or a female. They want someone to be able to do that. And I think, certainly, I'm not saying martial arts is the only way to go, but it's one way to go, and it's a way that I know.
What way are you going now, for the rest of your life or for the foreseeable future? Because you basically have retired, you told me, but you're still
Yes,
doing lots of
retired
work.
from the job, I'm still volunteering. Uh, I just hope I can keep on doing what I'm doing, and I'm happy doing it. I'm happy doing my volunteering. Uh, I'm reaching out a bit. I've reached out to a men's health and wellbeing group recently. I'm going to meet them next week, hopefully, and really, I'm enjoying life. I initially, when I stopped working, I really missed my job. I really had to come to terms with stopping work, because I'd worked for 35 years, whatever it is, and I always found a lot of uh, happiness and fulfillment with my work, and I was proud of my work, and I really missed it, and I had to come to terms with that, because that was a big wrench for me. And the colleagues that I worked with, and certainly the communities and the individuals that I worked with and for and in partnership with, I still miss it, but I've had to come to terms with it. So for me, it's about staying healthy, keeping my head together, and just sharing what experience I have with people. I'm getting older, and everybody on the street, everybody I train, are all young. So they're looking upon me as a bit of an old guy now, and
The
that's okay.
sensei. Surely you call yourself the
It's
sensei.
in Chinese martial arts. It's a sifu, or I'm wary of even people calling me that, because that sort of can put you on a pedestal. But some people are deserving of that title. I just just say, well, my mum and dad christened me Martin, so that's good enough.
Well, thank you for joining me on the Chatty
You're
Bench
welcome.
today. Fascinating conversation. If you have your thoughts and want to join us on the Chatty Bench, you can just get in touch at info@yourlurgan.com, and we'll be right there. And someday when it's not so sunny, we'll be back on that yellow Chatty Bench. I'm Donagh McKeown. Thank you very much for joining us.